Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Today we carry forward our discussion on legal research, methods and methodology. And in today's lecture, we are going to discuss sampling in quantitative research, types of sampling, advantage of sampling, sampling error and sample size. We are going to cover nature of sampling, sampling in quantitative research, advantages of sampling, types of sampling, sampling error and sample size. Now, let us start with the nature of sampling. What is sampling? So, sampling basically refer to any systematic method of selection of a small number of a people or a group out of a large grouping of persons. We call that a population or we call that a universe. So, it is the procedure of selecting a limited number of cases according to certain defined principles and applying the information from the sample to the whole population, for drawing inferences and conclusion. Let us understand the meaning of this sampling with the help of one example. For example, opinion polls. Opinion polls. See, number of organizations or maybe the media group to ascertain the popularity rating of the political party, or maybe to know from the people that who is their favorite leaders, they conduct an opinion poll. So, through this opinion poll, they try to interview maybe the 100 or 200 people out of the population of 2,000 people, and then they try to collect the information that what they think, that who is their favorite leader, or according to them which party will win the election. On the basis of that opinion of the 200 people, the media groups or the news channels, they show the opinion poll in their news that according to their survey and on the basis of the sample they collected from that particular geographical area, this leader is very famous among the universe or the population of that area, and maybe this party has the chances to win the coming election. So, opinion poll is a very famous or known example of the sampling. So, because it is not possible for the media house to reach all the 2,000 people at a time, and it will be very expensive for them also. So, they literally choose 200 and then they ask their opinion, and on the basis of that they set their opinion poll. Now, let us understand that one of the basic reason of using sampling. What is the reason of using sampling? The reason is that population may often so large and it is not possible to collect information from all the individual or a group. As I said, that out of the population of 2,000, they simply connect with the 200 people from that geographical area, and on the basis of their answer, they broadcast their opinion poll on the basis of that. So, the aim is to learn something about a large group. Now, this is very important. The sampling help to learn about something from a large group, but without studying each and every one of that group. So, they pick a small number of people or a population from that particular area, and that is known as sample. Let us see one example on your screen. A researcher, for example, he may be interested in knowing about the working condition. What? The working condition where? In certain type of selected industry. Or maybe he want to know about the views of lawyers in state on certain legal and social issues. Now, practically, it is not possible to, contact and ask each and every lawyer. So, what a researcher do, he might be choose a sample of 200 or 300 lawyers into different or 4 different cities, and on the basis of their information, then he can construe some idea that okay, this research, this law need to be changed or it need to be amended. So sampling enable the researchers to study a manageable number of persons, because it is not feasible to approach or to interact with each and everyone. And when the researcher he study manageable number of persons, then he also draw conclusion, and now this conclusion may be applied to the whole group of the people, So for a researcher, sampling means to an end. Now he finalized that okay, fine, this is my sample and I have to continue my research, my social legal research on the basis of this number of sample. So the aim is to learn something about a large group, as I already said, without having to study every member for that group. So for example, if a researcher intended to interview all the women member of a parliament, we know that the number of a woman in a parliament is very less. So then he don't need for sampling, as their number could be reasonably small. So when the number is reasonably small, the researcher will not go for sampling. He can interact with each the woman member of parliament individually, ask them the questions and get his answer for the questions. For example, if a researcher intend to interview all women members of parliament, there is no need for sampling, as their number could be reasonably small. So when the sample is not required, when the number of things the researcher want to examine is small, when the data is easily accessible to the researcher, then there is no need of sampling. So sampling is only required when the number of the population is large, and then the researcher has to be choose few of the respondent to collect the information. Now moving ahead, what the sampling in the quantitative research. Now we understand that what is sampling in the quantitative research. See, sampling is widely used in quantitative research. In our previous lectures, we already understand that what is the qualitative research and quantitative research, and today we see that this sampling is widely used in the quantitative research, because in quantitative research, where the questionnaires or the interviews, they are used to collect the information. So the researcher cannot approach each and everyone in the whole population. So that's why he choose a few respondents, and that we call that he choose a sample. So sample are selected, and on the basis of their responses, the conclusion are drawn. Now whatever the conclusion are drawn, they are applied to the whole of the population. However, in quantitative research, researcher rarely draw a representative sample from a large number of cases. So sampling is exclusively used in the quantitative research. What are the advantages of the sampling? Sampling enable researcher to learn something about a large group without having to study every member of that group. So it means that in a total population, for example, this is the universe, we call that this is the population. Now this is the population, or we call that this is the universe. This is the universe. In this universe, researcher pick, this is a sample, this is a sample, and in this sample he interact with these respondent or subject either through questionnaire or through interview. So whatever the observation or the information the researcher get from these samples will be assumed the information collect from the total population or from the universe. So sampling enable the researcher to learn something about a large group without having studied each and every member of the group. So here researcher only interact with these members of this population, not with the members who are outer of the circle. So the inner circle is the sample, and the complete population or the number or in this circle, we call them, this is the universe. And second advantage of this sampling is this saves money. This saves money because it is cheaper to, collect information of 200 people rather than the 2000 people. So the study of sample provide a high level of accuracy as compared with the study of a large number of people involved in this. So the first thing, that sampling save money, and again it also save the time as well. So if the number of sample unit is small, then these can be studied intensively. I am repeating it again. If the number of sampling unit is small, then these can be studied intensively and examined from various point of view. And where the population is a homogeneous nature, even then the examination of the few of the samples may be brought to draw enough accurate conclusion of the problem, right? Then in a survey, large number of population, there is always a great likelihood of errors. If the population is large, the chances of error is also large. So a response, for example, may be coded incorrectly, and there may be tabulation errors, and there may be other mistakes due to mainly the great amount of work is involved while collecting the information. Now let us understand what are the technical terms which is used in sampling. The first is the sampling element or unit. Now I am going to draw this. What is the sampling unit? For example, I just give an example. For example, that this is your universe. Universe is also known as what is the total population. So this is universe, and from this universe I draw, this is the total universe. All the people or the subject, they are known as population or universe. Now this is the sample unit. This is the sample unit, and in this sample unit, this is the sample. This is the sample. This is the sample. Now understand, sampling unit, person or things that researcher intended to study. In this diagram, the researcher intended to study this sample. This is the total universe, and in this total universe there are so many person, or let it be the population of 2000, right? So if the population of 2000, now researcher cannot contact each and everyone in the population of 2000. What he did? He select 5% of this 2000, which is 200, and now 200 is his sample size. 200 is his sample size. So the person or thing that researcher intend to study are called sampling elements. These are the sampling element, or they can call the sampling unit or unit of analysis or object of the study. So in most of the situation, sampling element or unit of analysis, they are individual person. As I said that in this population, these are the sample. We call this is a sample unit, but they may be a group. In our example, this is a group of person, right? And it may be the organization or maybe the institution and so on. So let us take an example. See on your screen, when a researcher interview a woman respondent to know whether she had any personal experience of workplace harassment, she may be described as the sampling unit. So in this example, this universe is the women who are working in different offices or in a private company and firms. Now out of these women, let it be they are working in one institution, and in this institution their number is 150, and out of 150, now researcher contact with the 25 women and he tried to ask them that whether they have faced any personal experience of workplace harassment or not. So every woman in among these 25 will be called the sampling unit. So the unit of analysis, sampling element or object of the study, we call her. So here she is the person about whom the interviewer want to collect the information. So the women, they are called that they are the sampling unit. Now, what is the population? See, population refer to the total number of cases. Now, you can see in this diagram, these are the total number of cases of having specific characteristics. So, if in this institution, all these are the women who are working in this institution, it means all of them, they are carrying the same characteristics. They all are working and they all are women. So, they all are working, they all are women, they are of the same gender, they are working in the same institution, and that's why we call that this population refer to the total number of cases having the same characteristics or specific characteristics from which a sample is drawn. So, a population may be a group of people. It is a group of people such as all the people residing in a city or all the students in a university, and in our case, all the women who are working in this institution, all the women who are working in this institution. We call that these are the population. And out of that population or the universe of 150, the researcher choose 25. Researcher choose 25. So, the 25 is the sampling unit and the 150 is the population. And the population, they share the same characteristics. They share the same identity because all of them, they are working in this institution. Now, moving ahead, see what is the sampling frame? What is the sampling frame? Sampling frame refer to a complete list of all the units. Sampling frame. So, complete list of all the units from which a sample is drawn. From which a sample is drawn. So, this list is either prepared by the researcher for the purpose of the study, or he may consist, some existing list of the population. So, for example, if he wish to draw a sample of the students of a college, so I think this will be very easy for the researcher to get the list of the student from the principal office. Now, that list of the student which he get from the principal office is known as sampling frame. Is known as a sampling frame. Now, example of sampling frame: telephone directories, listing name of the doctors, then club members, lawyers, any type of list. So, I think with these examples, the one thing is very clear that sampling frame is a complete list of the unit from which a sample is drawn. So, sampling frame is a complete list. I said lawyer, okay, then in a one particular district bar in judicial complex, you will get a complete list of the lawyers, or maybe doctors in a hospital, the researcher get a complete list of the doctors. So, this is complete list of the unit from which the sample is drawn. This list is either prepared by or it may be collected by. So, these are known as the sampling frame. These are the sampling frame. Now, the another technical term which is used in sampling is sampling design. See, the sampling design is determined before sample selection and data collection is made. It means that it is the job which the researcher has to do before interacting with his respondent, that whether he want to conduct an interview or he want to continue his research with the questionnaire method. So, the sampling design is the procedure for selecting a sample. This is the process, this is the way that how a sample is collected by the researcher. We call that this is a sample design. Now, what this sample design consists of? It refers to a method. Now, this is the way researcher adopt for selecting sample from a population. So, sampling design, it is determined before sample selection and data collection is made. So, in this reference, as I already said, using questionnaire, maybe the interview as a method of information collection is used. So, sampling design refer to the procedure the researcher should adopt in selecting persons who would be the respondent. Now, so when a researcher has selected the population to be, studied, the next step is to draw a sample. So, that will represent the population adequately. So, sampling unit is in a given population and some information is already ready, available in the form of list. So, now we will discuss what are the different types of sampling. Now, this is really interesting to understand the different types of sampling. We will see that what are the different type of sampling. Broadly we classified them into two categories. Sampling is classified into two categories: probability sampling, non-probability sampling. And the word probability sampling and non-probability sampling explain, they are self-explaining. What does it mean? What is the probability? Where is the probability? And in non-probability, there is no probability. So for the probability sampling is concerned, this sampling, this category placed simple random sampling. Under probability sampling, the another we will discuss systematic sampling, then stratified sampling, and then the cluster sampling. So we have one, simple random sampling, two, systematic sampling, third, stratified sampling, and fourth, the cluster sampling. The second category, non-probability sampling, again it has some further subcategories. The one is convenience sampling. Now this is the self-expressing sampling, convenience sampling, purposive sampling. Second, snowball sampling, and then the quota sampling. So basically, we divide the sampling into two categories, broadly into two categories: the probability sampling, the non-probability sampling. And then further, the probability sampling has the further sub-classification, and so is for the non-probability classification. Now let us discuss one by one the different type of probability sampling. So now we understand that probability samples are those in which every unit of the population to be sampled has a known probability or chance of being included in the sample. Let us understand this. What does it mean? It means that this is a universe, and among all these, each of them has the equal chance to become a sample of that particular research. Become a sample of particular research. So it means that all of them, there is a probability that he might become sample for the research, or maybe she become a sample of the researcher, or maybe this one become. So the probability is there. Probability is there. So that's why we said that probability samples are those in which every unit of the population, this is the population, and in this population, all these units, they have the equal chance of being included in the sample. So in our sample, we pick this, and so they become the sample. So they are included as a sample. So most of the sample used by the specialized organizations and media agencies, as I already given example of the opinion poll. So all these agencies, they are using the probability sampling. They are using the way of probability sampling to collect information from their respondent. Now let us understand one by one. What is a simple random sampling? What is a simple random sampling? See, simple random sampling is when a researcher randomly select a person from a population, and this to be included in a sample. So the purpose is to ensure, in simple random sampling, the purpose is sure that each person in the population has the probability or a chance of being selected. As I said, that here the probability is there, and these people, they are randomly. So I randomly pick this, I randomly pick this one, I randomly pick this one as my sample. So even the simple random sampling, we say that the sample or the people, they have, population has equal chance to become the part of this sample. So each person has the equal chance out of this population to become a sample. Now let us see what is the simple random sampling. So out of these 5, if we have to choose, so these are the students of one college. They are there in the cafeteria. The person want to collect some information, and he is very much sure that he has to be collect information from this particular group of students who are this particular group of students who are studying in the final year of their college. So now he randomly want to choose 2 or 3 of them. He picked this one randomly, then this one, and then this one. This one get chance, this one get chance, this one get chance. This is like a lottery method in which each individual units are picked up from a given population. So this is the given population. Randomly he was picked, and he was picked. That's why the simple random sampling is also called a lottery method. So probability is always there that any one among them has an equal chance to become a part of the sample. So in simple random sampling, similarity or differences among the member of the population such as the age, the level of education, religion, relation background have no importance. Maybe some of these students, they may be Hindu, maybe one Muslim, maybe Christian, religion doesn't matter. Few of them, they might have a very good students, their intelligence, their level of education doesn't matter. They might be from the NCR, they might be from the rural area, that doesn't matter. So in simple random sampling, similarity, differences among the members of the population, their age, their gender, their religion, their racial background, it doesn't matter. Now let us take one example of the simple random sampling. In a survey, the purpose of which, now see carefully, what is the purpose? Purpose is to ascertain attitude and opinion of people on an issue of general interest. Now what is the issue? The effectiveness of a law prohibiting smoking in public places. So there is a survey conducted. The purpose was to ascertain what is the attitude and opinion of the people. The issue is effectiveness of a law prohibiting smoking in public places. Now all the persons have equal probability of being selected for a random sample, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their background, their gender, their age, all other similar facts. For example, in a survey, the purpose of which is to ascertain attitude and opinion of people on an issue of general interest, such as the effectiveness of a law prohibiting smoking in public places. Now, in this survey, all the persons, they have equal opportunity to become a part of this sample, irrespective of their caste, their religion, their sex, their education level. All of them, they have the equal chance. I mean, there is a probability that any one of them can be choose to become a part of this survey. We call that now there is the random simple random sampling, where all of them, they have a chance to become the part of that sample. Now moving ahead, systematic sampling. Systematic sampling. Okay, now understand that what is this systematic sampling? What is this systematic sampling? For example, this is number 1, this is number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Systematic. So systematic sampling is a variation of simple random sampling. Now in this diagram, you can see they are the 11 person. They are the 11 person. Now in systematic way, we choose this 2, and then after 2, we left 3, 4, then we choose 5. Systematic way, 6, 7 is left, we choose 8. Okay, 9, 10 is left, we choose 11. Now this is the systematic way. First we have to start it somewhere. So we started with the 2, we left the 2, then we choose the 5th, we left the 6, 7, we choose the 8, we left the 9, 10, and then we choose the 11. This is in the systematic way. Now let us understand what is this systematic sampling. I'm sure that with the help of this diagram, we little bit understand that what is the systematic sampling. We'll understand this more with this discussion. See, the system involved taking every kth element which is listed in the sampling. So, the first step is to give a number to each element in the sampling. We give number to each element in the sampling. Next step is to determine a random starting point. I choose a random starting point. My point is number 2 in the sampling frame. So, in the sampling frame, I started from this point number 2. Now, the value from the point, from the starting point, the researcher select every kth element in the sample. So, the value of k is called the sampling interval. Now, the value of k is called the sampling interval. Now, this is the sampling interval. This is the sampling interval, and with this sampling interval, the interval is determined by dividing the population size of sampling frame by the sample size the researcher has selected. So, here 2, 5, 8, 11, this is the systematic sampling. So, in a systematic sampling, researcher has to determine the random starting point in the sampling frame. So, in our case, the 2, I started with the 2. So, this is the random starting point from the sampling frame, and after that, we have to be certain the kth element there. The next is the probability sampling. The probability sampling. Now, see what is the probability? So, in systematic sampling, it is easier compared with the simple random sampling. Yes, this is easy because we already know that what is the kth factor here. So, the simple random sampling method is time consuming, because as severely noted, researcher has to search all over the sampling frame to identify, okay, the element and then correspondence with the random number. But in a systematic sampling, researcher proceed in an orderly way. We choose 2, we left 3, 4, we choose 5, we left 6, 7, we choose 8, we left 9, 10, we choose 11. So, the researcher proceed in a very proper way, in an order way from the sampling frame. We choose from the sampling frame, we started from a one random point 2, and then we further move on in a very systematic manner. This is the systematic sampling. Now, let us understand that what is this stratified sampling. What is this stratified sampling? Now, let us understand stratified sampling. For example, this is the total. Now, in this diagram, we will see the people, the population, we divided this population into small strata. So, I draw this 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. Okay. Now, in these 4 groups, there is these people. Now, stratified sampling, and we call them strata. We call them strata. Now, in stratified sampling method, this is used in situation where population from which a sample is desired is to be drawn is not homogeneous group. Is not a homogeneous group. So, stratified sample, in sampling, the population is divided into small group. I divided the population into small group, and I already mentioned here, I already write down here that these are the strata. Now, before a sample is drawn, and then they separate samples, I mean random or systematic, are drawn from each of the strata. I am repeating it again. In stratified sampling, the population divided into small subgroup, they are called strata, and before a sample is drawn, and then separate samples are drawn from each of the strata. So, stratified sampling, the population is divided into small subgroups. We call them strata. And before a sample is drawn, then these separate samples, now either they are randomly or in a systematic way, we drawn from each strata, means now we take a sample from this strata, we can take it systematically or maybe in a random sampling. So, I use the random sampling. I choose this one from there, this one from there randomly, this one from there, this one from there, this one from there, maybe this one there and this one from there. So in stratified sampling, population is divided into segments or groups. These are the stratas. And these stratas can be based on a single criteria, maybe on the rank, maybe on a profession, maybe on a age, and maybe on a number. So stratified sampling, it consists maybe a list of all professors, readers and lecturers, and after this a random or a systematic sample is drawn within the each group to collect some kind of information. This is called the stratified sampling. Now let us understand that what is this cluster? What is this cluster sampling? Cluster is a natural grouping of people. So cluster is group of people. This is group of people. This is group of people. So cluster is natural grouping of people such as college or district or block of houses or an organization. So let us assume that these are the 4 colleges. These are the 4 colleges in a one area or in a one city or maybe in a one district. Now researcher first select clusters, and here the researcher select 4 colleges and then select sample from these clusters. So now the 4 colleges are there, and then these are the students studying there, or maybe the professors who are working in these colleges or teaching in these colleges. So cluster sampling, researcher first select the clusters, the cluster is already there, then select sample from those clusters. Now the sample is selected from those clusters. And in stratified sampling, samples are drawn from the each stratum, from each strata. But here in cluster sampling, samples are drawn only from those clusters. Which researchers select for the sample? For example, the college student, maybe from the BSc background, or for example, all the registered lawyers in a city, or all the students who are studying law in a university. So we call, now this is the cluster sampling. So this method is involved first selecting the large groups, these are the clusters, and then selecting the sampling unit. Now from this cluster, the sampling unit is selected from the grouping. So the clusters are selected by using simple random sampling or maybe the stratified sampling. So in this diagram, what I did, I used the random, simple random sampling. So cluster sampling allow maybe the list to be completed only for the selecting clusters, groups rather than of the whole population. Now let us see what is a non-probability sampling. As I already said that non-probability sampling, it express what does it mean. In non-probability sampling, the probability of any particular unit of the population being chosen is unknown. The selection of sampling unit in non-probability sampling is quite arbitrary, as the researcher heavily rely on his personal judgment. In non-probability sampling, researcher, he rely his own judgment. Means he has this understanding, or he might have this apprehension that he better judge from whom he want to collect, or from whom he want to collect the information. So non-probability sampling is also known by a different name. We call this deliberate sampling, something which has been done deliberately. So when the sample is chosen deliberately, when the it is also known purposive sampling and the judgment sampling. So these are the different names of the non-probability sampling, and the other names, the different names tell you that here everything is either done deliberately, or researcher purposely he chose his sample, or maybe he become judgmental to choose the sample because he is in this apprehension that I have a better understanding that who will be able to answer my questions and all that. So this type of sampling, items for the sample are selected deliberately by the researcher. So he is using his discretion, he is using his own understanding while choosing the sample. So in non-probability sampling, personal choice of the researcher play a very, very important role, because he is the one who has to collect information, and maybe at one point of time he may produce as a result which is favorable to his point of view. So, and this is because there is no random sampling. So, he definitely want to interact with the respondent whom he knows that he will definitely answer the question, the answer which he was expecting from them in that particular issue. So, he will definitely approach the people who are of his or who are of the same minded, or maybe he know that he is like-minded, or they may be like-minded. So, that is why they want to be interact or want to be collect information only from those respondents. Now, what is the convenience sampling? The another kind of non-probability sampling is convenience sampling, when the researcher try to collect information as per his convenience. This is called availability sampling, accidental sampling. For example, you are visited to a university to collect some data that whether the students, they are satisfied with the education system prevailing in India or not. The first thing which is important to collect such information, that researcher has to be use the method of simple random sampling for that. But what the researcher did, he went to the university canteen and he saw some students, they were there having their cup of tea. He went and joined them. He tried to ask them that whether they are satisfied with the education system prevailing in India, and in that way he start his interaction with them. And then he, very convenient way, in that cafeteria, he collect the information. We call this accidental sampling because once he interact with the 5 or 6 boys who were seated there, then he might come into come with interaction with some girls there. So, the researcher not try to visit the other sides of the college or university and interact with randomly with the different students to know what is their point of view on the education system of India, education system which is prevailing in India. Now, the researcher tried to do research as per his own convenience, or if he accidentally met someone, he asked him and collect the information. So, see, for example, researcher wishes to ascertain the view of students on a current social problem. Now, researcher might decide to ask a professor for permission to administer a small questionnaire to all the students in his or her class, or maybe he want to interview whoever the researcher meets to the college canteen, or maybe the researcher might decide to find a convenient site in the university campus for which to observe the behavior of the students to collect information. Now, this form of sampling is easy and it's very quick and it is very inexpensive, because the researcher has not to invest his time, some money, or maybe he has not interested or willing to approach the different students from the different backgrounds, from the different courses, to collect some information about the education system prevailing in India, right? This is the example of the convenience sampling, Now, the next is purposive sampling, which the researcher proposed. Now, he has become judgmental. Researcher become judgmental. In purposive sampling, we call this judgmental or deliberative sampling. Here, researchers select the sample which is based upon his or her own judgment about some particular characteristic required for the sample unit. For example, the researcher want to get information about the response of the students in a university about the judgment on triple talaq by Honorable Supreme Court of India. Now, what he did, he thought that I should go and only interact with the students who are pursuing law in the university or college. And then this is something which is preconceived in his mind. He deliberately interact with the students who are pursuing law in the college. And he left rest of the students, maybe they are pursuing their BSc or maybe their degree in MBA, etc. So here the researcher become judgmental to finalize that who will answer his questions. So the possibility is also there that the students who are from the commerce background, maybe from the sciences background, they might have read the judgment, they might have the very good understanding of that whether the judgment is good for the Muslim women or whether the judgment is actually favorable and is actually protecting the rights of a woman under Article 14 of the Constitution, etc. Right. So here in purposive sampling, the researcher becomes judgmental. He thought that, okay, I have to interact only with the students who are pursuing law because according to him, they are the only students in the university who have the better understanding of law. Researcher, that's why researcher here select a sample in a way that serve a specific purpose even if the sample does not fully represent the population. So the possibility is also there, the probability is also there that the student who are actually pursuing law, they might have not read the judgment of triple talaq. They might have not a very good understanding on the Muslim personal law. Those chances are also there, but then he has this apprehension, he is already become judgmental that I will only ask the question from the students who are pursuing law. So purposive scheme, it is useful in cases where the population from which the sample is to be drawn is homogeneous and the researcher has the fair knowledge and of the various aspects of the population. So purposive sampling is used in exploratory study. We already now have understanding that what are the exploratory study. So when the researcher try to explore something or some issue which has not earlier addressed, there is no doctrine or a theory on that particular subject, then researcher try to pursue with the exploratory study. And in exploratory study, this purposive sampling is very, very useful because now he becomes judgmental. He has this idea that maybe the people who are living in that particular area, they might have a very well understanding that what kind of a issue they are facing, and that's why he becomes judgmental. Now this judgmental or this judgment of the researcher might help him to collect the very informative data about that particular problem. So this technique is useful in cases where the population is from which the sample is to be drawn in homogeneous and researcher has a very fair knowledge of the various aspects of law. Now let us also see one example for the purposive sampling as well. For example, the sampling consists of 100 staff members. How many? 100 staff members of a law faculty. And researcher desire to ascertain, of course, in a qualitative research, but you cannot quantify. So the views and opinions of the such members on a certain legal issues. Not all the staff members could be expected to have a far insight into the various aspects of this legal issue. So in this kind of a situation, researcher might, he picks certain persons as respondent, and then the samples so selected, it would be the result of researcher's experience and his personal judgment that the particular one Mr. A, who is a professor of law and he has a very good expertise in the constitutional law. So now he has this judgment that I should ask the question related to constitution, law or any judgment which is passed by the Honorable Supreme Court on a specific article of the constitution from this professor only. So this kind of purposive sampling is very helpful. What is this snowball sampling? Now another is a snowball sampling. Now this is very interesting to know that the snowball sampling, the snowball comes from the analogy of a snowball. The term snowball comes from the analogy of snowball. So when snowball rolled along, it is small but it pick us more snow. When snowball is rolled along, it is small but it pick up more snow and it become larger and larger as it roll down the hill. So this is similar what happened in the snowball sampling. This type of sampling is conducted in a various stages. First, when person having some specific characteristics are identified and then interviewed. So what respondent will do, these respondent, they are then expected to identify other individual who with the similar characteristics could be included in the sample. So researcher usually, the researcher usually begin with the convenience sampling, and then he asks each person in that sample to identify the another person to whom he should interact and collect some more information on the same issue. So this method of sampling is useful in community studies. Snowball sampling is very useful in and very helpful in community studies because the sampling depend upon the sampled person, and this sampled person will further recommend the another person who is also from the same background and who may be also from the same community. Now then there comes the quota sampling. What is a quota sampling? See, quota sampling is not like the the stratified sampling, though sometimes the people they confuse the quota sampling with the stratified sampling, but it is not like this. In this type of sampling, population is divided into various categories. So population is divided into various categories. We divide the population as male and female. We divided the sampling. We divided the population. We divide the population. The total population, we divided the total population. These are male, these are the females. Now, in this sampling, the quotas are set on the number of elements which is to be selected from each categories, and a researcher decide which group or groups of people are important for the study, and then they set quota, I mean the fixed number of each group in proportion to the group's representation to the population. So, quota sampling is often mistaken by, as I said, with the stratified probability sampling, but the both are not same. The groups here in the quota sampling, they are defined, the size of group is also specified, and then individual who fit this description, they are selected to fill the quotas. Now, let us see what is the sampling error. In many situations, researchers rely on telephone directories, sometimes the record of driving license and so on, maybe on the list of the students in the college. Few exception may be that the list of the students who are currently studying in the year, that can be correct, but if researcher collect the list of the students who studied 4 or 5 years back, then the chances that he get the correct list of the student is very less. So sampling frames are almost always incorrect. Maybe in telephone directory, number of people they have already cut down their landline correction. Maybe the driving license record is not up to the mark. So many people do not have any, maybe the driving license, the telephone number. So I just mentioned the few examples. So when researcher create or develop a sampling frame, you can say the sampling list from a given population, from the population of a city, maybe from the student community, maybe from women working in certain type of industries, there will always be a possibility of inaccurate assessment. We call this inaccurate assessment as a sampling error. So, sampling error is this is unavoidable mismatch between the sampling frame and the conceptually defined population. So, when there is unavoidable mismatch between the sampling frame and conceptually divided population, this is referred as a sampling error. This is referred as a sampling error. This is sampling error. And what is sample size? There are many conceptions regarding the actual size of a sample. So one is that sample size should be, in a certain proportion of the population. So in mostly the researcher, they try to take the 5% of the sample from the total population. Another is that if you increase the number of sample size, the accuracy of the result will decrease. Another possibility is, another perception is that if the number of the sample is decreased, the result will be more accurate. But what should be the size of the sample, or how large or small it should be? It is a very crucial question in sampling exercise, but it is certainly depend on what type of researcher want to pursue. So as a general rule, it should neither be excessively large nor too small. So otherwise there is no thumb rule to decide the sampling. So we can conclude, like, there is no doubt that sampling method provides a very important tool of research in the field of legal study. quantitative research, sampling method, they may help explore some of the new dimensions in legal research. So sampling is employed in a socio-legal study and in the sociological researches. So today we discuss about that what is the sampling. We understand that what are the different kinds of sampling, the probability, the non-probability, and then different kinds of sampling. I'm sure that all of you now get the understanding of the sampling and the complete topic of how the sampling will be used in the survey methods. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gillette Sam and I teach sociology at IIT Kanpur. Today I am going to tell you about an important debate that is occurring around the concept of globalization. Within the study of globalization, there are two sets of people. The first set of people argue that globalization is very real. It's something that is happening around us all the time, and in fact, it's something that is gaining strength over time. The second set of people, and the first set of people are called the globalists. The second set of people are not so convinced that globalization is something real, and they are referred to as skeptics. Now, the skeptics argue that unlike what the globalists would have us believe, that there are things and ideas and people that are traveling across the world, across multiple borders, and that we live in an interconnected world, actually there are many parts of the world and many types of people who are completely left out of these kind of global flows. So they would give you the example of typically indigenous communities who live across the world. And they would argue that if you look at the lives of indigenous communities, particularly tribes that are quite isolated in terms of their physical location, their lives continue without their participating in any kind of global flows. To this, the globalists would respond that even though people may live in isolated and remote locations, and they may not be directly involved in global flows, their lives today are still being influenced by events that are happening at a global scale. You can take the example of climate change. So, for instance, if there is an indigenous community that has no contact with anyone else in the world apart from themselves, but they live in an area which is experiencing an increase in sea levels and increase in the temperature. All of this may be attributed to people in neighboring countries, or actually rather events that are happening across the globe. So in that sense, even though you may not be directly participating in global flows, your everyday life is affected by what is happening around the world. Another argument that the skeptics make is in regard to what happens with the nation states. Now, initially when discussions about globalization started, and we are talking about the 1990s, the expectation was that the nation state as an entity is going to wither away. It's going to cease to be important. Now, skeptics could point out to the world today and say, well, nation states are still important. We still live our lives based on which nation we were born in or which nation we have citizenship in. their rules and regulations are still important for us. To which globalists would argue that this expectation that the nation state will cease to be important, that itself is a fallacy. Rather than facing a situation that the nation state becomes less important over time, we actually may be headed towards a situation where, in addition to the nation state, there are other laws which become important to our lives, and they shape our lives on an everyday basis.